Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We have all of the Center for Education Abroad's ambassadors here with us today. So, there's four of us, and we're just going to go through some FAQs that we get a lot of times from students who are either planning, thinking, or considering about going abroad. And first, we have Riley with us, who's a chemical engineer. He's a senior. He went abroad in the fall of 2022, and he went on the Global Engineering Exchange to Melbourne, Australia. Then we have Ian, who's a chemistry and Spanish major, also a senior. He went abroad in spring of 2023 on the IES Abroad Madrid Language and Area Studies program. So that's like a full Spanish immersion program. And then we have Tochukwu, who's a BME biomedical major, and she's a senior as well. We're all seniors. Fall of 2022, she went on an exchange program to the University of Bristol in the UK. I'm also a senior. I went abroad in the summer of 2022 to Poppi, Italy on the Dante program. And with all that being said, let's get into the frequently asked questions. Will my financial aid and scholarships transfer to my study abroad?
I can start off, and you all could chip in wherever. And yeah, so the thing about financial aid, disclaimer, it looks different for everyone depending on what your package looks like. But one thing to mention is if you're going on an exchange program, for instance, it's a lot cheaper to do that than to study here. So you're definitely going to get a refund. But the financial aid office is going to adjust it a bit so you don't have too much money. And after you do some adjustments, what's going to happen is you will need to pay for your housing out of that refund that you receive. So just to clarify, you definitely get a refund back. So you won't be going abroad without money. And if you're going for an IES abroad program, that's a bit different, as well as faculty led. Because what happens is your housing is part of your financial aid package, so your refund's going to look a bit different, but the benefit is you won't have to pay for housing out of that refund.
No, definitely. So IES Abroad is a third-party program. So it's a company outside of the University of Rochester that connects students at institutions like ours with institutions abroad. And so, like Tochukwu was saying, right, my housing package was included within my entire loan, I suppose, that I would be taking out every semester. So that's not something that normally third-party providers or rather students, right, who go on third-party provider programs have to worry about. Additionally, depending on the type of program you went on, there are definitely a lot of scholarships that you can apply for, and you can visit our website to learn more about those. I know I received a scholarship going abroad specifically for Spanish immersion. So, there's money, or as one of our staff at the office says, there's money everywhere, you just have to look for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it pretty well, but one big thing I'd say is that so let's say you don't get a refund if you don't either get enough financial aid to have money coming back to you. You do just pay University of Rochester as normal, so it's not like you're paying for your program separately. It's all through the University of Rochester Workday sort of system. And I think it's also important to note this only applies to the University of Rochester partner programs. So if you decide to go on a program that the University of Rochester doesn't have a partnership with, a relationship with, basically not any of the programs that are found on our website, then you'll be in charge of paying that program directly. And I'm sure some of the staff in the office would be happy to help with that.
Lastly, for faculty-led, like Tochukwu was saying, it is a flat number they give you that encompasses everything with housing and tuition and everything, basically. If you go on faculty-led programs, you should definitely check in with the department you're studying with, because a lot of times they have their own budgets, and I know for the Italian department, they're separate donors who really focus on studying abroad. So sometimes you can automatically be enrolled in, that department-specific scholarship, which is kind of what happened with me. But that was great. So moving on to the next question. I'm an international student, so I'm already studying abroad. Why should I consider education abroad opportunities at the U of R? So in other words, if you're studying here from another country, some people, study abroad again, like a continuous study abroad. to some other place. Anyone want to start with this one?
I can start with it.
Mhm.
So just to give a little bit about me, I was born in Boston, but my parents are from Nigeria, and that's where I've lived my whole life. So I do consider myself an international student, and I have a lot of international student friends, so they ask this question a lot. And my first response is it's free. So like it's free, so why not take the opportunity? Because you know sometimes you're worried about immersing yourself in a whole new culture and then having to do that again. But when you study abroad, you open yourself up to different, like the possibilities of different things, learn about different cultures, and it's just an opportunity you don't get everywhere all the time. So it's kind of like a U of R where they're investing a lot to make those opportunities happen. So why wouldn't you just use it? You know, it's not like you have to or you don't have to kind of thing, but it's just really like if you have goals related to you know, investing in the world or doing things in different countries and not just in the US or, you know, just in your home country, it's really important to go out there and learn about how these different people work and think. So it's always a benefit to you.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my international friends, and he, you know, studied in 3 different countries before.
Wow.
With like being an international student in 3 different countries, and he says that it really helps him try to like shape his career mindset, and that each country does things so differently. Where do I want to end up working, or how do I want my job to look like? So yeah, I think it is really beneficial. Do you guys want to add anything or not really?
I think it's also like because even domestic students, like we have the opportunity to study abroad like twice during our undergrad. So, and a lot of people do take advantage of that. So, not that that's exactly the same, but like you might ask then why wouldn't a domestic student study abroad twice and not just once? And I think it's all the same reasons. Like it's just more of an experience.
Yeah.
Okay. When you first landed there, what happened? Like, what was your first step? What did you do?
Well, so because I went on a third-party provider, they kind of gave us a list of things to do in order to get to our apartment or our homestay. However, I didn't follow that because I wanted a cheap flight, and so I actually arrived the day before we were supposed to fly in just because it was like $500 cheaper.
Damn.
And so I actually ended up staying in a hostel my first night, which was crazy because I ended up walking around central Madrid for about an hour and a half before actually finding the hostel because I had no idea how addresses worked in Spain. So that was kind of crazy. So it was definitely very, very overwhelming. So I am kind of a pack rat. So I had 2 big suitcases around Madrid as myself, like not ready to speak Spanish to anyone with my backpack just clearly looking like a lost tourist was definitely an experience getting there. And then because I didn't have a subway card and I hadn't yet activated my credit card for abroad yet because I didn't really have access to internet in the hostel because it was like pay for internet and I was like I don't want to do that. I couldn't take the subway to my apartment. I then walked, I think it was like 3 kilometers from where I was because I wasn't obviously staying in the center of Madrid.
Did you feel safe?
Yeah, well, I left in the morning, so like in the morning, like I feel like in a big city, it's pretty normal to see people walking around with luggage. Maybe not just like a white American, but like hey, whatever. But no, I felt safe the entire time. Like Madrid's a very safe city, but I think getting from the airport and not knowing really how directions work with absolutely no service was definitely an experience.
What about you, Tochukwu?
I've never actually been asked this question, so it's really nice to, you know, like travel back. So for me, it was a pretty long flight. I was so tired and just so ready to, you know, get to my bed and just relax. So when I had landed in Bristol finally, but first, like when we were like flying into Bristol, I was like, wow, so much farmland. And what I learned is like, you know, Bristol, there's like the central city of Bristol, and then there's like, you know, outside of Bristol where like a lot more locals live, so that's where they have all the farmland and everything. So then once I arrived, I got there, I got my 2 suitcases, I had that too. And I had to find the transportation to go there. So I knew Bolt was working because Bolt works in Nigeria, so I was like, oh, that has to work in the UK. So I tried searching, but I don't know, it wasn't working. I think maybe my internet or something. I was just like, oh wow, this is not working out. So I couldn't access Uber, Bolt, or Lyft. I mean, Lyft definitely didn't work there. But so I was like, what am I gonna do? I walk around the counter, and then there are those taxi guys and everything. One of them's like 40 pounds, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I mean, what else am I gonna do? So I'm like, sure. He's like, yeah, cash, and I'm like. So I have to go back and then withdraw cash, and you know how the thing goes, you get a fee for doing that. So I just withdrew a lot more money in case I needed it throughout the day or throughout my stay, because I felt that, okay, if he needed cash, maybe more people would. Turned out people didn't need cash, it was just this guy. So I put all my things in the suitcase and in the car rather, and it was a long trip. I think one thing I really like about Rochester is how the airport's like 5 minutes away. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else. In Bristol, I think was like maybe a 40-minute drive or something around that, and then there's a shuttle that goes. I didn't know about that at that time, but that would have taken like an hour or so. So I got in there, and then I drove all the way to the dorms, and on the way when I started seeing cities and people, I was like, okay, cool, I'm not in the middle of nowhere. Because I had no idea what to expect from Bristol. And then the guy, so when we got there, I didn't know what my apartment, like where it was, because everywhere just felt like loops. It's like a new place. And he's like, oh yeah, this is where I drop you off, and I'm looking around, it's just pubs, and I'm like, no, this is not it. So we turn around a bit, then I start Googling to see what the apartment looked like, then I finally found it. And I think, here in the US, people are, willing to help you move in and carry your bags or whatever. That's not it there. You do everything yourself. So that was a bit of a shock. And I felt so alone because, you see, like, because everyone else was moving into, and I was like a first year dorm. So you have the first year kids, there with their parents, moving them in. And I'm over here trying to lift my 2 suitcases out. So that was an experience. And when I finally settled in, I realized that, I needed so much. I needed to clean my room and everything else. And then I was so hungry, I ordered food. But then it never arrived. And then that was when I met my flatmate rather. She's really sweet. So we walked, she's like, 5 minutes away, that they have like, it was Park Ave, so they have like streets on a whole hill. So you gotta walk for your food. But I was like, sure, yeah, no problem. And I had to go with her because I didn't have a SIM, I didn't have connection. But yeah, it worked out.
Why does everyone have such a rough start?
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my experience, like, Australia is very far, which was great time. So I was lucky because I have family in LA, so I ended up staying with them for a bit as kind of to break up the trip since I'm from Massachusetts. And then from LA to get to Australia, it was like a 14.5-hour flight to Sydney, and then I connected through Sydney to Melbourne. And the biggest, like, if I could have gotten a direct flight, I think that would be my biggest suggestion, because I had a really tight connection, and because I was switching from international to domestic, and I didn't know anything about how like their domestic flights worked. I actually found this mom that was also having a really tight connection, and she was like, she could realize I was kind of stressed, and she was like, here, let me help you, and she was going to the same terminal, so she kind of led me, which is super nice, because I had to hop on a train and like use my credit card and stuff, and I was buying tickets, and I had no idea what was going on because I was so overtired. But I ended up making it, and it worked out really well. When I got there, they had arranged like a transport to pick us up and bring us to where we were staying. So it was really nice to have that organized. I didn't really have to think about anything. They kind of flagged me down and led me there. And then when I got there, I would say the best decision I made was packing sheets in my suitcase. Granted, I did bring 2 bags. They were underweight when I got there, but I ended up bringing 3 bags home. So just think about that. Throughout the semester, it cost me like, I think $350 in baggage just to get my stuff home. So keep that in mind. But like, honestly, having sheets and just being able to like walk upstairs, make my bed, and take a nap right when I got there was the absolute, like, that might be the best decision I made all semester, because I was so exhausted. But yeah, I think it went pretty smoothly overall. I got dinner that night, and I ended up falling down the stairs with my dinner. So it was just, I think I was just really tired. But yeah, but everybody's experience is definitely different.
I think one thing that shocked me going to the UK was I mean, you expect that, right? But it was just like all the stores were just different in the sense that one store doesn't sell everything. You have to go to different stores to find different things. I was so tired. I had to go to like maybe 4 different stores to get things I needed for my room. So for like a whole week, I slept without pillows. Yeah,
Oh
that
my
was
gosh.
an experience. Yeah.
I had a friend who forgot her bed sheets and she slept on her clothes. Like she would lay down.
Honestly,
Yeah, she.
Whatever you need to do at that
Yeah.
point. Nobody tells you about how tired you are when you get there.
Yeah.
And another thing, you mentioned clothes. Like laundry, you've got to pay for it. I
I-
think your bar tells us, no, you've got to pay for
For
your
your
laundry.
laundry.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
horrible.
Was it in your buildings, or was it? Do you have to go to like a laundromat? 'Cause
No.
Mine was in my building.
Mine was in my
Yeah.
I had to
building.
walk up like 6 flights. Though. It was
Mine was in a
horrible.
nunnery.
I forgot about that part. I was about to be like, huh?
No,
how?
I felt so bad because they like told us and everything, and then we had to air dry because obviously, especially in Europe, they don't have dryers.
Yeah.
So you just so many times people just mixed up their clothes. I look in my like hamper. I'm like, okay, I have like 3 different people's clothes with me.
No, it was so annoying because they didn't have a dryer, so we had to go buy like one of those like drying racks you just like open up, and then like obviously
Yeah.
like, I'm doing like a week's worth of clothes.
Well, if you go to Australia, you get tumble dryers, so they do cost money though.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but we will be back with another episode in about a week or two with some new FAQs because we get a lot of them. But thank you so much for joining us. I hope this helped out a lot, and we'll see you next time.